Greetings and welcome to Mediocre Minis. We go forward with spooky season, this time with a vampire, something that actually kind of really could be spooky. You know the drill by now, this is a Reaper Bones mini. We slap on a nice coat of DNG and then we get started right away with this guy. Now there's really not too much skin on this vampire, but I knew I wanted him to be pale, so we're going to start off with that. It was an interesting mix when I took the gray and then added in a very tiny bit of white to make almost a very light gray. And with this light gray, that ended up serving effectively as my base tone. You can play with this color as much as you need to, adding in a little bit more white or gray to go a little bit lighter or darker. Also, kind of looking at his face, it in a weird way kind of looks like guts. Not a bad thing, just something I noticed. While I was already working on his head, I decided to move straight up to, well, the hair. And for the hair, I gave it a base coat of a very dark gray. I didn't want to use black because I can't get any darker from that if I needed to. So I mixed in a very small amount of white into black and got a dark gray. And once that dried, of course, just added in a small amount of white to that mix to give myself some highlights for the hair. For the last part of his head, I decided to give him some basic eyes. Started off with just straight out of the pot off-white for the actual eyeball itself. And I used red for the color of the eye. Taking a look at the cape, I initially wanted to just make it a simple red cape. I mean, it kind of makes sense, a vampire in a red cape. I mean, can't get much more straightforward than that. So I took a small amount of purple and I mixed that in with the red. And then I decided to kind of split up the cape, doing the inside and the outside. When I say the outside, I mean, we'll say the back, and the inside, which is, well, I guess, closer to the body. Makes it a little bit more regal, a little more fancy. But starting off with just, we'll say, the outside. The dark red, reddish purplish mix was the base tone. And then from there, just highlight it up with just straight up red. I kept it relatively thin, so I didn't have too much of a stark transition from the darkest areas into the lighter areas. But several coats of the red all over the outside of the cape ended up working out relatively nicely. And to make it a little bit brighter, I added in some orange into the mix. I wanted to stay away from white, because white can tend to make red more pinkish, and I didn't want it to be pink. Now for the inside of the cape. Started off with just a straight up purple base coat. I used kind of a crappy brush for this, and really got in there. There's some nooks and crannies that are kind of hard to reach, so I just made a mess out of it. I realized that this was going to be the most difficult area to reach, so if I got paint all over the armor, it doesn't matter, I'm going to repaint the armor in a bit anyways. But it did get very messy to get everything covered. Once everything was finally covered with the purple, then I just highlighted up from there. Just added in some white, since I already had white and off-white on the palette. Mixed that into the purple and did some simple highlights up from there. Now we move on to the armor and the sword. Base coated all of the armor and the weapons with silver. I mean, duh, it's armor, so of course we're going to go with that. Once the paint was dry, then I gave a heavy black wash to all of the armor. This is very similar to what we did with the Pumpkin Knight a few videos back. And then after a day and a half, whenever the wash finally dried, I went back in with the silver and then highlighted up from there. Yeah, and after some nice simple highlights of the silver, I figured, you know what, we can bring some gold into this. Again, just like the Pumpkin Knight, just to make it look cooler. And he's a vampire after all, he surely has at least a little bit of style. So then I just took the gold paint and went around and highlighted and added gold to where I think it would be cool. Parts of the boots, the hilt of the sword, some highlights on the shoulder pads, all these things. Figured, you know what, it looked pretty cool as gold. And it turns out it kind of did look pretty cool as gold. Once I was happy with all of the gold and its coverage, I gave those areas a quick wash with sepia. And the last major area on the vampire, of course, was the base. Since the base is a little bit different than some of the previous bases, I did all of the stone areas in our gray paint, and everything under the stone I painted brown. Almost like it was underground, and this was just a simple cutaway of a staircase or an area of where this vampire was at. I did some quick highlights by adding in some off-white into the gray to bring out some of the nooks and crannies and cracks on the stones. Once that was all dry, I gave the entire base the dirt brown and, of course, the stone with a black wash. I also dabbed a little bit of sepia wash onto different areas of the stone as well, and this brought in a little bit more color variation and changed things up a little bit. Once all the washes were dry, I did a few simple highlights with off-white and gray on the stones to re-bring out all of those edges, and I dabbed on a small amount of the dark brown for the base, and then later on added in a little bit of the light brown, just to bring out all of the texture. Now there are also two skulls on the base. I gave those a base coat with the off-white, and then a quick wash with sepia. And there we have it. The vampire is complete. Another spooky mini for this spooky season. He might not necessarily be a classic vampire, but I still think he looks pretty cool. Red and purple are nice, regal, wonderful colors, and I enjoy painting them a lot. How about you? Do you have a favorite vampire of yours, whether fiction or miniature or maybe even real vampire? Let me down below. I'm kind of curious as to what you think. Thank you very much for watching and coming along on this ride for spooky season. We still have a long way to go. This has been Mediocre Minis, and may the divine light your path.